And now, a word from our sponsor. Ayaya songs are about our histories. Ayaya is an Inuit-owned firm that tells our stories in many languages across Canada. They are experts in publishing children's books, usually in syllabics, and they do large multi-language projects like the reports of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Commission. If you need help getting your stories into classrooms or homes in Cree, Inuktitut, or other Indigenous languages, check them out at ayaya.ca. That's ayaya.ca. Ayaya is a proud sponsor of the Roots and Hoots podcast.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Roots and Hoots, a podcast project produced by the Legacy of Hope Foundation. Since 2020, we've been gathering, laughing, learning hard truths, and sharing in community conversations with Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. Each episode, we learn something new, and we're excited to be sharing this journey with you. Roots and Hoots is about connecting with and celebrating Indigenous people's contributions to their fields of study, work, and cultures. We also speak with allies who share how they are furthering the work of reconciliation in Canada. To learn more about the Legacy of Hope Foundation and the work that we do, please visit legacyofhope.ca.
Welcome back to another episode of Roots and Hoots. This week, host Gordon is joined by Brandon Mitchell from Listuguj Mi'gmaq First Nation. Brandon is a seasoned multidisciplinary artist with over 2 decades of expertise in graphic novels, gaming, and animation. With a lifelong passion for drawing, he shares how he turned that talent into a career in storytelling and animation. In this conversation, Brandon reflects on how a teaching role in his home community sparked a deeper commitment to Indigenous storytelling and ultimately led him to found Birch Bark Comics. Please enjoy this special episode of Roots and Hoots.
Okay, welcome, Brandon. Brandon Mitchell. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your roots and your family background and your cultural identity.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Brandon Mitchell, and I'm Mi'gmaq from Listuguj, Quebec. It's off the Gaspé Peninsula, and that's me.
Did any of your family members attend a residential school or day school?
Not residential school, but day school.
Yeah,
in Listuguj.
And how was that experience? Did you go yourself?
No, I didn't. We didn't. It was done by that time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was over. Yeah. What role does the Mi'gmaq language play in your life, and how much is spoken in your community?
I'm doing my best to learn the language. It was one of those weird things growing up. I was of the generation of, we were told that if you want to be successful, learn French.
Really?
So
Not English.
English and French.
Yeah.
Those were the priorities. And that's what was ingrained community wise, not home wise. And it was one of those things where, remember when I was, my parents reminded me of this. My dad used to be an iron worker, and we would travel with my dad. So if work was in Boston, we'd go to Boston.
Oh, really?
If the work was in St. John, we'd go to St. John,
Yeah.
all of us, right?
Yeah.
And my parents would say when I was younger, I was fluent.
Yeah.
I was a fluent speaker, because that's all they were talking in Mi'gmaq, yeah. And when we decided to move back home, I think it was like 4 or 5, we decided to move back home. And it switched when I moved back to my community.
Yeah.
I heard everyone speak English.
Yeah.
And then I just went to default and stuck with English.
Yeah. Like in your community now, in Listuguj, how many people speak it?
I don't have the exact number of how many fluent speakers there are, but it's not high. I don't know if it's under 200 or, and we have a community of 3,000, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
My parents are fluent speakers.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just, it's not that they shake their head, but they just didn't understand like how fast I was able to lose it.
Right. Yeah.
But during that time in the 80s, there was a big push to, like you're going to French immersion school.
Yeah.
Learn French.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was raised by my grandfather and my grandparents, and they encouraged me to get an education, but I was lucky. I was able to keep my language, my indigenous language, and but they had the same kind of attitude. Like they didn't see a place. They didn't think that Cree would really help me in any way. that I was better off learning English and be able to adapt to the white man's world
Yep.
a lot better, if I went to school and learned English. That's kind of
Yeah, that was the same. Like
similar, yeah.
it was very, very similar, and it was only, and I think there was a big shift in the '90s. I remember because they're just like I think a lot of the adults at the time, they're doing their best. Like that's how I look at it. The parents are trying to do their best for their kids, right?
Yeah.
But then in the '90s, that's when I realized like we have more like the kids are not speaking,
right?
Language is disappearing, right? And then they're trying to, they've been trying to bring it back, and it gets more and more difficult each generation, right?
You see that happening across Canada now.
Yeah, and it's good to see the revitalization, but a lot more. I think the struggle is, what is language immersion?
Yeah.
And there's a struggle, like, I know a couple of colors, or I know how to count, like, oh yeah, I know the basics, or I know some commands. Everyone knows sit down, or bossy, or bitchy, or I know the commands, right? But to have a conversation, I don't have that, and it hurts. Like it's one of those things. Like I see everyone, like I see my grandmother talking, and she's trying to find her words in English to
But do you
talk to me.
understand her when she's talking?
I understand. Basically what she, I'll be able to understand what she's saying, but just to see, like, if I go to Paris, or if I go to Quebec, I have to go find my French words now, right? But you can see that, and she's trying to find her English words, and I'm like, I tried.
They're called silent speakers. People that can understand, but like just can't speak it.
Yeah.
And I have cousins like that. They grew up in a town, and so all their friends spoke English. And although their parents, my aunt and uncle, they kind of speak. My aunt spoke some English because she went to residential school, but my uncle Gilbert never spoke English. Well, a little bit eventually, but mostly in Cree. So,
right.
So the kids, my cousins, they can all understand Cree, but they can't speak it. That's weird, eh?
Yeah, exactly, right. So that's the thing. Like I know my parents are talking, and I know what they're saying, and then I'll reply in English.
Yeah. You have a diploma in animation and design, and a master's degree in education. That's quite an interesting combination. And how do these degrees feed into the work you're doing today?
Oh, geez.
How did you how did you use these two to be successful like you are?
I don't.
No?
No, well, I don't know. So it's a really good question, and I sit there and I try to ponder it myself.
Yeah.
And I'm the type of, because of how I was raised, I don't really think about what I do. I just do it.
Yeah.
My parents are really great at nurturing my interests when I was younger. And my mom was really good at my mom's always had like an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where she's always encouraged me to take chances, calculated risks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in the same thing with my dad too. Like, there was it was one of those things where they both worked hard to provide really great opportunities for us. And I always loved drawing. So I loved comic books.
Yeah.
I loved cartoon. Like I said, I'm an 80s kid, so I grew up with Transformers, He-Man, like that was my jam.
Yeah.
And Ninja Turtles, I grew up with all that stuff. And
how old are you?
I'm 45, going to be 46.
Yeah. It's almost my son's age.
But how this all is kind of connected. It's mostly about my interests. My interests fuel what I do.
Yeah.
It's not so much the training I received has been important. So my interest was always in drawing. I was self-taught for the longest time. And it was, I remember when I didn't know what to do with my drawings My parents didn't really know what I wanted to do with my drawings also.
Yeah. So you had a collection of drawings already.
Oh yeah, like I said, I was drawing since grade 5.
Really? So you had a whole mess with them.
Yeah. And but what and I think for my parents, what helped them make a connection was I remember we went to Disney World, and we went to Disney Hollywood, and they had storyboards of The Lion King. We were brought into a room, and they were showing you how how stories are made.
Yeah.
And I was either 13 or 15 at the time, 13 or 14 at the time. Anyways, we were brought into this room, and I just saw this wall of drawings. And then that's when my dad was just like, "That's what you do." And like this, then look, this is how it's made.
Yeah.
And then when he made that connection, he was like, "You could do this." Right. And I was like, "Well, how do I do that then?" Right. How do I get my drawings? How do I do this stuff? And it was so cool. I was like, "Oh my God, that's what I want to do." And
you were inspired.
Yeah, I was inspired, and it was through my folks, like I said, taking us to these places. And then there was a article in a newspaper.
Yeah.
My dad would always read the Montreal Gazette on Saturdays or Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
And it's like there's this school, Sheridan, Toronto, and look, they're teaching students how to animate.
Mm-hmm.
You should apply. And as I got older, I was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. I was locked in. It was like laser focused now. I was like, okay, I don't want to go to university. Because I don't like science, and I don't like, I was good at math, but I really like drawing.
Yeah.
And I was intimidated by what you had to do to get into university. So I found, I was like, I can go to school for drawing. This is great. And so as I got older, I found out that there was other animation schools.
Yeah.
There's Algonquin here. I don't know if they're still doing animation. But then there's one even closer. So when I lived in Listuguj, and I applied to the New Brunswick Community College in Miramichi. And that's where I was struggling. I was like, do I go to Ottawa or do I go to Miramichi? Because I got into both schools. And my mom was just like, yeah. She worked in she did a lot of post-secondary support work.
Yeah.
And she didn't want to say, she wasn't trying to say, don't do that, stay with animation. But one of the things that she noticed, and I don't know if you're maybe you've seen the cycle too, where it's to leave your community to go to post-secondary, it's important to get an education, but no one prepares you for the culture shock of being away from home. And the further away and that's one of the things she noticed, that the further away you go, the harder it is.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, no, but I'll do Miramichi. And I settled on Miramichi. But she was right, because I was homesick, and it was only 2 hours away. It was 2 hours from home.
Yeah.
But the great thing was that it was 2 hours from home, so I was home every second weekend.
Yeah. Well, you were lucky.
Yeah, and I got my training. I got my, and I learned how to draw. I've learned the craft of drawing, and I've learned the craft of storytelling.
Yeah, yeah. You're the founder of Birch Bar Comics.
Yes.
And the creator of Sacred Circles comic series. Tell us a bit about this project and how is it going?
Well, that kind of leads into where I was. So I went to school for animation, and what happened was 3 weeks before graduation, we had our portfolios ready, and my friends and I we had our portfolios, we had our demo reels, and we were going to do a road trip from Montreal to Halifax and drop our stuff off to each studio looking for work. And 3 weeks before graduation, I got an offer to be an art instructor in my community, Listuguj School. Yeah. And they called me up, and they're just like, hey, we have this. They called me. It wasn't me calling them. They're just like, we have an opportunity. Want to know if you're interested. We heard you're graduating, blah, 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 and want to know if you're interested. And I was like, teaching? I didn't go to school for teaching. I don't know how to teach.
Yeah.
And so I struggled. I was like, well, let me get back to you. So I went, I went to my friends, and they're like, why? I was really conflicted. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Guys, I'm conflicted here. I'm like, what? What's the problem? I said, I just got offered a job. And they're looking at me like I had 3 heads. I'm like, what's the problem? Well, I want to do we said we're gonna go on the road and do this. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, we're looking for work. You have work. Like this is you got a job. Like you got to like, don't be stupid. Take the go for like take the job.
Yeah.
And it was one of the most rewarding things I did, because one of the things, we grew up with also, you hear this a lot, like go get an education and bring it back. So that was also in the back of my mind. I was like, well, actually, I'll be fulfilling that thing that was ingrained in me.
Yeah.
I was like, I got something to give back. So I went there and tossed into the lion's den, because I was like, teaching is completely separate from drawing.
Yeah.
But they were just like, you'll figure it out. And that was the thing too, like you'll figure it. Like that was like, it won't be hard.
Yeah.
So I did that. It was a lot of fun. And I taught grade 6, or grade 5 to grade 8 over there, and showed them some drawing techniques. I showed them some fundamentals. I demystified. What I wanted to do was demystify and make drawing accessible. Because a lot of the times that you see, like even when I see the beautiful paintings in here, right? You're like, wow, this is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
How did they do that?
Yeah.
Like, all right, you either have that mentality of, well, I could do that, or how did they do that?
Yeah.
Right. And the thing is, when I look at this, I see, like, I know that so much work went into this. Like, how many rough drawings did they do in their sketchbook? How, like, before they put the final, like, when they committed to the drawing, right?
Yeah.
To the painting. So showing kids that,
So these pictures we see here, these were not done in one shot, were they?
No, well, maybe they were, but when I look at it, I look at the work that went into it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When you practice your craft enough, then maybe you can, like, you're going to still do a rough drawing. You're going to still do a pencil.
Give you an idea.
Yeah. You still have to sketch it out before you like, oh, I'm going to just do it like that. Right. So showing kids the drawing process, the creative process. It's not, you see this finished product, but there's so many steps that went into it. Right. And then because so many kids say, I can't draw.
Yeah.
Or I can't do it. Can't or won't.
Yeah.
Those are 2 separate words. Right. And let me show you how to get to a final finished product. Right.
Yeah.
And then, so like a couple of things happen, right? When I show kids how to draw, I make it accessible. I hope I don't take the fun out of it. But when I show them how to get to a finished product, like how much work goes into it, they're just like, oh my gosh, it's a lot of work. That's what some of them say, or some of them are they get so into it and they keep on building the drawing. So that's usually what happens. Like, this is the creative process, right?
Yeah.
Or some of them are like, I didn't know this is how it's done. So, it's one of those fun things. But to go back to Birch Bark Comics, this is how it's connected. Was I was showing them the things that I learned in college. So how to make a character, how to tell a story.
Yeah.
And I gave them an exercise, and it was like a 2-parter, or like, like I would give them part of a story and they have to finish it. So I would stop like near the end or halfway through. It's like, okay, so what's the rest? How would you finish the story?
Like, what do you mean? Like in a drawing or?
No, well, so what? So this
it's a story, like a storyline.
A story. Yeah, I'll give him a legend. I think I gave him a legend of one of the legends on Bluescap.
Yeah.
And then I purposely stopped the legend halfway through, and I said, "How would you guys finish the story?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't know." And I was like, "Well, you guys know how storytelling works now. Like, how, like, do your own version of it." And so they did that. And then what happened was, midway through the exercise, because I was the teacher and I knew everything. One of them was just like, "Well, what would you do?"
Yeah.
They asked me, like, "How would you finish the story?" And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Let me. And then so I got out. I stepped away from being a teacher, and I sat down with them at the table, and I started like roughing out what would I do?
Yeah.
Mapping it out. And I had an idea. I was playing around with it some more, and class was done. They all left, and I was like, I think there's something here, and I kept on working at it. And I thought, they were the ones that inspired me, because I thought it wasn't that I thought it was like short attention spans, right? Like, they're not going to. I only had these classes once a week,
right?
So I only had them the following week. So I thought for sure that they would forget about it, but I was still working on the idea.
Yeah.
So I'm just sitting there, and then afterwards they're like, they come in for class and getting ready for the new assignment, and they're just like, "So, what'd you come up with?" They're all excited. They want to know what I came up with, and I was just like, "For real? Like, yeah. What did you do?" So I actually had some draw. Like I have an idea, and I showed them the idea that I had and what I wanted to do, and they're like, "This is so cool! Like you got to keep on working on it." And that's the genesis of Sacred Circles. And Sacred Circles was taking one of the legends and putting a more contemporary spin on it.
Wow.
The other part of that journey though was I had to make a decision, which was I couldn't stay as a teacher and launch a business at the same time, because back then nobody was doing Indigenous content, or it was hard to get Indigenous. Like I couldn't go to Canada Council for the Arts. I couldn't go to like provincial arts for grants because, believe it or not, 26 years ago, the comic book format was seen as too commercial. Like they didn't look at it as like, or superheroes. Like we don't. It's not art. Is what they basically said back then. So they wouldn't touch it. So I had to like try to find another avenue of getting this idea out. And that's when my mom inspired me. Well, start a business. So that's where Birch Bar Comics came. So it was graduate, teach, get inspired, launch a business.
The Legacy of Hope Foundation has produced 30 exhibitions that shed light on Indigenous history. Exhibitions are mobile, standalone, and provide a unique museum-like experience that include first-hand Indigenous testimonies of the residential school system and 60 Scoop. The exhibitions promote healing and encourage acts of reconciliation. They can be hosted in schools, offices, parliaments, galleries, or any public space across Canada. To learn more about our exhibitions and borrowing, please contact our exhibitions department at exhibitions@legacyofhope.ca.
You were also a contributing author of, I quote, "This Place, 150 Years Retold," unquote. What can you tell us about your piece? Mi'gmaq, that's, we remember it? In Mi'gmaq. And the impact of this event in your community, how has it like impacted your community?
So this was one of those things. So if I'm going on the journey of my creative journey, so I launched Birch Bar Comics, and I was the first one out of the gate. Not the first one out of the gate, but we were one of 3 like Indigenous creators at the time doing graphic novels, right? And the great thing about being ahead of the curve is that you get to make I can't call it mistakes. Learnings. As an adult learner now, it's learnings, not mistakes. And launching a new business and all that stuff, it was it took a toll, and I had to make a decision, and I was like, I gotta put this away, and it was fun. I took it as far as I could, and it's time to do other things. And what happened was I had some really good friends that kept me creative. So as many times as I said, it's like that Godfather Part 3. Every time I think I'm out, someone pulls me back in.
The famous line.
Yeah. But what happened was, like, Sean Muir, he was a really good, he is a really good friend, and he kept the creative lights on for me through the Healthy Aboriginal Network, and he gave me some writing projects. So anytime, and it just so happened, like, everyone, I don't know, maybe the force does exist, because anytime that I'm just like, I think I'm done with it, someone comes in and says, "No, you're not done." And so Sean kept the lights going, and kept the creativity going, and I didn't really pay attention. Sean Muir, so he's the director or owner of Indigenous Story Studio out in BC, and so we've been working together since 2005, 2006. But this is all connected to this place. So I got approached in 2015 by the publisher, by Highwater Press. And the backstory to this too is really important. It's so important that A, you have a website, B, that it doesn't filter your emails as junk mail. Because they reached out to me, and I think in 2013 or 2014 they reached out to me, and I got an email from the from them, and they're just like, "Hi, you Brandon Mitchell. We like to create Birchbark Comics and Sacred Circles, and we want to meet with you, discuss a project." I was like, "Oh, nice, cool." I replied, and sent the email off. And I'm not one to. I don't really follow up. I should, but I don't. I'm like, I did my due diligence. I sent the email. It's in the receiver's creator's hand.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear nothing back. And I got, when you're in this field, like things get lost in the mail, or so anyways, I didn't think nothing of it. And I just let it be. And almost a year to that day that I sent that email, I got another email, and it was this weird case of deja vu. Like, "Are you Brandon Mitchell, Birchbark Comics? And there's an opportunity we want to discuss with you, and you're able to take a call." And I'm just like, I felt like I replied to this. Everything sounds so familiar. And I was like, "Yes, I'm Brandon Mitchell. Yes, I'm available to meet." Hit send.
Yeah.
Didn't hear nothing. I was like, "Okay, well, whatever." And I think it was like 4 or 5 months after I sent that email, I got like a ding on my LinkedIn, and the name sounded familiar. I was like, "This name sounds familiar. I'll accept." As soon as I accepted, my messages were blowing up. "All right, Brandon Mitchell, we've been trying to get a hold of you for the last 2 years," and I was like, "Well, easy now. What's going on here? Nice to meet you too." And then I was like, I looked at her name and looked at the emails, and I was like, "Oh, let me." And I was like, "I've replied to your emails," and
Yeah.
and they were just like, they're like, "Oh my God, it went to our junk mail."
Oh, see.
Yeah. So they're like, "We're so sorry.
Yeah.
We want to talk to you. There's a project coming up, and we want to know if you're interested." So I took the call, and then that's when they were explaining, we're doing something for the 150th birthday of Canada, and they explained the project.
That's
This place, yeah. And then they were just like, "You're one of the first ones we were approaching here," and they're just like, "We're so honored to talk to you and meet you, and we're excited that you're part of this project." And then they tell me, well, all the other people that are involved in the project. And I was like, "You're excited for me? Like, I'm like, look at all these people you got in this book. This is awesome." And then they explained that that we want to. It's telling our history through our eyes.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I wanted to focus on, so I talked about what Sacred Circles was kind of talking about our legends. As I got older, I wanted to do more like treaty awareness or treaty education.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw this as an opportunity to talk about the raids that happened in our community back in 81, salmon raids.
Right. I remember those.
Yeah. See, everyone remembers, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's, we remember it, right?
Yeah.
And so I pitched them the idea, and they're like, "Okay, if no one picks that era, then it's yours."
Yeah.
I said, "Sure enough, no one picked it." And I was like, "Perfect, awesome." So I get to writing, and it was really important for me to revisit that, because at the time of that, one of the things, like, when I was living in Ottawa, anytime I would say where I was from, especially from older folk, they were like, "Oh, Listuguj, I remember the raids. I was there, or I helped out so and so, right?" And because it was so long since I heard about it community level, right? But when I came to Ottawa, everyone knew about it, or they remember where they were when the raids happened, right? It's like, there's something here.
Yeah.
So it was it was the right project, the right time,
Yeah.
and to bring awareness to what happened in our community. And what was great was I was able to work with my mother-in-law on this project, and it was funny because when I told her, "I got this project, got this gig," and she was looking at me, and she's like, "You have to write about the first raids." And I was like, "Yep, no problem. Tell me what happened." And she's telling me, and I was like, "Oh my God, I didn't know this." Like, because when I was doing the research for this, when I was doing like the official research, like you look at what was like documented and stuff, everyone would always say previous raids, but they would never go into detail about these previous raids. So this was, and then so she tells me what happened. I was
So
like, "Oh
this
my
is all
God."
related to the salmon fishing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was like an annual thing that would happen every year. Like, so what happened was, the SQ would come in and basically terrorize the community.
Yeah.
And so what happened when she said, "You got to write about the first raids," I was like, "Okay, tell me what happened." And she's telling me all these things, and so I'm writing it all down, and I have a script and I give it to her. And the story starts off, June 1981. And that's how far she got. I gave her the script. I was like, "Can't read it." And all she saw was the first line, and she throws it right back at me. And it's like, "You got to write about the first raids."
Yeah.
And I was like, "What do you mean? You keep on reading. That's everything that you said."
Yeah.
And then she's looking, "Oh, okay. But this is not the first raid."
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" So this happened in 1980. This happened in 1979. You got to write about those.
When are the first raids in?
I think it was 78 or 79.
Yeah.
But there was a big one in 80.
Yeah,
And
I remember
that
that
was,
one, yeah.
the one in 80. But the
Yeah.
big one that got the coverage, national
Yeah.
coverage, was 81.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where they ran the boats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 81 was the boat ramming. And then so when she was talking about the one in 80 was the community was able to force out the SQ non-violently.
So what was the kink, or what was the legal loophole that allowed the RCMP to raid your community when you are under a treaty, right?
You know what? It wasn't. It was the SQ. Yeah. And for them, I think it was just the loophole. The loophole was no one knew.
Yeah.
Nobody they were just enforcing. They didn't see our treaty rights as valid.
Really? In Quebec?
In Quebec, yeah, at that time.
SQs were the official police force in Quebec.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they came in community when they didn't have the right to.
Yeah.
And seized nets.
They seized nets, and so this must have had some a pretty big impact on the community, and and how people felt, and the uneasiness, probably.
Yeah, and even for I was trying to capture. It was hard to. I didn't want to redo what was done. So Alanez did an amazing documentary. That's the gold standard. And I was just trying to tell it more from community level and trying to address things that weren't captured in there.
Yeah.
And there's so much, and then even then too, a lot of the people that were kids then, I didn't dive into it, but everyone was talking. You can still see that it impacted them at the time. When I would talk to them,
Yeah.
The trauma of witnessing what was happening.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't around. I was born. I was a year old, but my parents had the foresight enough to say, "We're not." Remember, I said that there was work in Boston.
Yeah.
So we were in the States.
You were away.
Yeah, we were away, and but then even then, so I remember them telling us we were away for that, but then my dad told me the level of racism at the border, even just across, right? So there was a lot of racism at the time. They got a hard time crossing.
From where to where?
Just from New Brunswick to Maine.
The American authorities were aware of this stuff?
I don't know what the full they just 80s meant to just the race, just general racism. Yeah. That's how I look at it. It's awful, but I'm just it's general racism.
General racism, yeah. Okay. You're the creator and author of a new young readers series called Giju's Gift. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Giju's Gift? Tell us about this, and why is it important to you to create stories specifically for young people?
So the Giju's Gift. This is the story of the Bugladamooch. So the Bugladamooch are little people for us, little tricksters. And
is that a myth, or
the Bugladamooch? Well, even in Cree, right? You little people, right? So in Mi'gmaq, they're called Bugladamooch, and they're little tricksters, and they for us. The story about the Bugladamooch was, and the Bugladamooch must have visited me when I was a kid. Because as mentioned before, like I said, I love Transformers and He-Man and all this stuff. And when I was 5 years old, I had this Transformer figure, Bumblebee. It was my favorite figure. But I was also a very messy kid. And so the Bugladamooch will take things from you if you don't take care of them. And I remember one day my room was a mess or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, I can't find Bumblebee.
Yeah.
So I tried to clean up my room and turn the room upside down. I was starting to put things away, trying to, clean up my room. And then my mom was like, what are you doing? And I looked at her and I was almost crying. I was like, I can't find my Bumblebee. And she was like, well, Bugladamooch took it and never saw it.
You never seen it again?
Never seen it again.
Oh my God.
Yeah, never saw it again. And then,
why do you think it happened to it?
I think Blue Gun Moose took it. So I clean up more. I clean up more after myself. My room's a little. It's still messy, but it's my mess.
Yeah. You know where everything is.
Yeah, I know where everything is. But the thing is that so what I wanted to do with Gaju's gift is I wanted to. It was almost full circle in terms of what I did with Sacred Circles.
Mm-hmm.
Sacred Circles was a story about young kids, like middle school kids, trying to save their parents from this evil creature. And Gaju's gift was more of younger kids or younger girl and learning about her culture, learning about who she is.
Yeah.
And so the one thing about the Blue Gun Moose too is not everyone can see them, right? Some people can see them, some people can't.
Yeah.
So this one can see them. And she sees one. And they go on an adventure together because my version of the Blue Gun Moose is that they still take things from you, but they're taking things to save memories. To preserve memories, preserve history. So they're kind of collectors, like me. I'm a collector.
Okay.
That's my version, anyways. And they go on an adventure together. And what I tried to do with Gaju's gift also was try and incorporate the language, try and incorporate our culture, and just tell a fun adventure story.
Mm-hmm. You did some work in animation, including a series of short stories rooted in your community of Listuguj. Can you share what has meant to you to bring your community to life in the series of stories?
So I'm part of an Indigenous artist collective in New Brunswick. It's the Nigwe Collective. And I was really fortunate these are all like great full circle stories. Like I never thought I would, at that point in my life, I didn't think I was going to animate or, be in work in animation.
Mm-hmm.
But I was approached to do an animated short, and it could have been on whatever I wanted culturally. So when I was approached and offered that, my first thing was like, I can't do this. I'm not, I haven't touched animation in decades.
Mm-hmm.
And
this was after
yes,
you got your master's degree? Or?
Yeah. So this was after my master's. Like my first animated short was 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, and it was Tara Audibert. We went to school together in Miramichi, and she's great. But she was just like, yeah, you can do it. You can do you have it. You can do this. And I was like, okay, sure, let's do it. So they gave me a budget and they gave me a team and I said, well, I wanted to do something. I want to incorporate stories that I heard from growing up from my parents, and that's where my first round of stories came from. It came from my mom and dad, and then we got renewed, and I was like, oh, I want to do something with my mother-in-law again. I want to, I want people to share stories about what they remember as kids.
Yeah,
and
she was an example.
So with my mother-in-law, she told me a story about picking blueberries. So it was just a fun story of what she remembered, her family going to the field and picking blueberries. And, she, and it was great for her to just reflect on her just growing up.
Yeah.
It was really cool to show her afterwards, right? She was like, because we would record her in Mi'gmaq, so she would tell the story in Mi'gmaq. And then I would show her the process, show her the steps. And at the end, she's like, that's my story.
Yeah.
And that's,
Was it like, did you use words and pictures?
Yeah. So with animation, I would I would do the recording, I would make a script, do the characters. And then with my team, we would animate it and put it all together, put sound effects and all that stuff. And it was really great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to see them all light up. And to me, the importance of these stories is that we all have stories that are worth telling and sharing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not, we sell ourselves short in the value of our stories.
Yeah.
Something as simple as, and not even that simple, like cherished memories, those are important to help preserve them.
Yeah.
Right. And then something to share something as personal as, just going out picking blueberries.
Yeah.
And how important it was to spend time with her brothers and her father.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, that's an important story.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that story in itself. It's like picking blueberries or picking raspberries or picking strawberries. It's something that most First Nations do.
Yeah.
Like Inuit do it too. Métis people do it too. You know? Unless maybe you live on the prairies, then
unless you're living in fields. But but it's those. We don't give ourselves enough credit for the importance of the memories that we have or the stories that we grew up with.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to do with those animated shorts.
Yeah. What's the reaction been like from your community, the people in your community? What's of the work that you've done in animation? How's it been received?
I hope it's been positive. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know. It's
when you go home, like, do people approach you and
I don't like
make
it.
reference to it?
It's not like it's not like when I go home, I'm just like Brandon Mitchell's here. Bow down before me. No, I mean, like, you know what it is? Like, I don't pay attention to
Well, you're not giving yourself enough credit. That's what you just said about, someone else.
true, yeah, I know, yeah, practice what I preach, I guess. But the thing is that whenever I create something,
Mhm.
I really just like let it out. Like, I just want it to have a life of its own.
Yeah. You're being honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I take a lot of joy. Like when someone approaches me, like, "Oh, I just saw this," and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool, that's great."
Yeah.
I know that even with Gaju's Gift, I went to Comic-Con. I did a presentation on it, and I was just thinking, like, I'll be in a room for like maybe 20 people. If 20 people show up, hell, if 5 people show up, I'll be happy. Right. And I remember they put me in a room, and it was a big room. And I was like, oh, shoot, there's going to be a lot of there's a lot of chairs in this room. My stress was rising or whatever. And I was like, oh, as the time was approaching for me to do my presentation, people were starting to show up. And I was like, okay, 20 people. Cool. Great. More people started showing up. I was like, oh, damn.
No chairs.
Yeah, no. And then like chairs were starting to fill up, and I was like, oh my God. At first I was just like, this is not like, I was starting to get anxious.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't know what to say or do.
Well, what were you supposed to do?
Just talk about
Your work?
my work and stuff like that. And then I did that, and I like talking about people ask me, I'm gonna talk about my journey and stuff. And like I said, I don't think about what I do. I just do it.
Yeah.
And whatever feels right. Yeah. So I know when I was going back to this going back to Jew's Gift.
Yeah.
One of the things I put in the back of that book was the language, and like I would sprinkle some words in there, and in the back of the book I would put the spelling, the correct spelling, the phonetic breakdown, and the meaning of the word.
Yeah.
So and then the book was mostly made for grade 1, grade 2. And but what happened was so when I was done my presentation, they did the whole question Q&A thing, and then one girl comes up and she was almost in tears, saying how important the book was to her, because the introduction to language, because it was being broken down in a way that she could understand it. And I was trying to keep it all together, because I knew it was important because that's how I learned.
Yeah.
Right. And I was just like, I don't want to say it was selfish, but the things that were in there were for me.
Yeah.
And how I learned. And then when she said how important it was for her, and it was helping her on her journey of learning the language.
Yeah.
That's when I was just like, the responsibility, I was just like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm ready for this responsibility. Yeah. But it felt good I was happy to hear how the book made her feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It affected her.
Yeah, it impacted her. Yeah. And I think even like the person that I was scared of the most was my niece, who was, at the time when the book came out, was 6. And I purposely didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell nobody the book was coming out until like 2 weeks before it came out. And I told her, and we brought her to the mall, or we brought her to Walmart. And I was like, oh, we'll get you guys something at the Barbie at the toy section. And she's like, oh, I want a book. And I was like, oh, you want a book? You read? And she looks at me like, yeah, I read. And so we go to the book section, and then my wife was just like, tell her. And I was like, I got a book coming out. And she looked at me like with daggers. Like, how come you're just telling me this now? So Dahlia was the first one to get a copy of the book.
Yeah.
And I was terrified to give it to her because kids are brutally honest. And I gave her the book, and I purposely didn't talk to her for like, I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know. And then I saw her about a month after.
So what she said to you?
She said, Uncle, I love the book. I thought it was, I love the story. And I was like, oh, okay, what was the part that you liked? And she said the language.
Wow.
I loved seeing the language.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Like I saw our language in the book. Yeah. So I was like,
you've never seen that before, right?
No, exactly. Yeah.
The language has been lost for some time.
And then for her to see it in, in print. And so,
And now a word from our sponsor. Ayaya songs are about our histories. Ayaya is an Inuit-owned firm that tells our stories in many languages across Canada. They are experts in publishing children's books, usually in syllabics, and they do large multi-language projects like the reports of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Commission. If you need help getting your stories into classrooms or homes in Cree, Inuktitut, or other Indigenous languages, check them out at ayaya.ca. That's AYAYA.ca. Ayaya is a proud sponsor of the Roots and Hoots podcast.
Okay, we're almost done here. Maybe I'll just give you one or two more questions. What comes to mind when you hear the word reconciliation, and what does it mean to you?
Oh, geez, what does it mean? What does it mean? What
does it mean to you?
I think I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Yeah. It's okay.
Well, no, but that's just it. I think we're still on this journey, right?
Yeah.
Of trying to figure it out, and I've been around long enough. I don't want it to be a trend.
Yeah.
I've been around long enough to see things our issues be trendy.
Right.
Right. Like if you go back to the raids in 81, like it's almost a cycle of, we get a lot of attention and then no attention.
Yeah.
And then a lot of attention and then no attention.
Right.
Like, and the thing when it comes to reconciliation, it shouldn't be treated like a trend. It shouldn't be treated like Isle no More or like these movements that this is not a movement. This is our life.
Yeah.
Right. And this is something that, you don't just pay attention to for 6 months or part of a news cycle, right? Like this is something that we all have to
continuous.
It's continuous, and you can't be. And the thing is too, is it's a two-way street, but the reconciliation part is not on our shoulders. It's not our responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's like they got to reconcile us for what they did to us, not the other way around. Right. Like, so, and I find, it's just one of those things where, now it's about accountability, or it's always been about accountability, but it's holding, institutions accountable.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where you have to nurture it, right? But it has to be nurtured on both sides.
Yeah.
Like
for sure.
But at the same time, it's not our responsibility.
Yeah.
But it's not our responsibility to take the action, but it's our responsibility to help nurture and create an environment where it can flourish and grow.
Right. Well said. Do you have a website?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's your website?
Finally, give me an easy question. So you can visit my website, birchbarkcomics.com. I am on Instagram, at writer Brandon Mitchell. And you can go on both platforms to check out what I'm up to. I do have a new book coming out. I have a sequel to Gajew's Gift coming out on May 6th. So go to Amazon, go to Chapters, go to your local bookstore, pre-order. Pre-orders are open. Pre-orders are up.
Awesome.
And that's for the new book. It's The Search for Glooskap.
Glooskap.
Galuskap. Yeah.
Our Mi'gmaq, I was once told, is part of the Algonquin language.
Yeah. It's part of the same.
So is Cree.
Oh, really? Yeah, yeah. So the family, yeah.
So we're related.
Hey, we're cousins.
Distant cousins.
I knew we were.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brandon, for taking the time to do this with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. It's been really fun.
Oh, yeah, no, this is a blast. I love doing this stuff.
Roots and Hoots is a podcast project produced by the Legacy of Hope Foundation. For episode show notes, please visit the podcast description and make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. For more information about the work we do, please visit legacyofhope.ca.